Your baby cannot tell you when something hurts. They don't have the words, they don't have the ability to sit across from you and say, "That thing you did this morning that affected me." But here is what most parents are never told: your baby is recording everything. Every sound, every expression, every moment of warmth or tension, it is all going in. And the things you'd never think twice about, the completely ordinary, everyday things, are quietly shaping who your child is going to become. Not just emotionally, neurologically, developmentally, at a level that, in some cases, reaches all the way into adulthood. I need to be clear about what I'm not talking about. I'm not talking about abuse. I'm not talking about neglect in any obvious sense. I'm talking about 10 completely normal things that millions of deeply loving, genuinely caring parents do every single day, things that actually hurt their baby's feelings in ways the baby cannot possibly express. And I'm going to walk through every single one of them. Because once you understand what's actually happening beneath the surface of these ordinary moments, you will never see them the same way again. Stay with me. Because number 4 on this list is something nearly every parent does in the first year, and the research behind it is genuinely shocking. And by the time we reach number 7, I promise you, you will look at a simple, quiet moment with your baby and feel it completely differently. This isn't about guilt. Guilt doesn't change behavior. Understanding does. And once you understand this, you can shift it. And that shift changes everything. Let's start at the beginning. Number 1, you've heard it said 1,000 times. Babies are resilient. And in certain ways, that's true. But here's where that phrase gets dangerously misleading. Babies are resilient when they have consistent emotional support. Without it, that resilience doesn't just weaken, it cracks. And it cracks early. The first thing on this list is so common, so deeply woven into cultural parenting advice, that most parents have never once considered it harmful. It's ignoring your baby's cries. And I don't mean ignoring in a cold, dismissive way. I mean the kind of ignoring that happens when you've read that you should wait a few minutes before responding to build independence, to avoid creating bad habits. Or you're simply running on 3 hours of sleep and a cold cup of coffee, and you think, they'll settle. But here's the part that changes everything. To a baby's brain, waiting is not neutral. When a baby cries and no one comes, their body doesn't sit patiently. Their stress hormone cortisol spikes rapidly, and in the first year of life, repeated cortisol spikes without a calming response from a caregiver actually alter the architecture of the developing brain. The regions responsible for emotional regulation, for trust, for memory formation, all of them are directly impacted. Dr. Alan Score, one of the world's leading neuropsychologists, has spent decades studying exactly this. His research shows that the emotional communication between a caregiver and a baby isn't just bonding. It is literally wiring the brain in real time. When a baby cries and a parent responds consistently, the baby's nervous system learns something foundational. The world is safe. Help comes. I matter. But when that response is delayed or absent repeatedly, a very different message gets wired in, and that message is far harder to undo later. One delayed response does not rewire a brain. Life happens. Nobody is there, every single second, and no one should expect that of themselves. But the pattern matters enormously. And once you understand what is happening neurologically in those moments of silence, you will feel very differently about waiting it out. Which brings us to number 2. And this one is subtle. So subtle that most parents never once notice they're doing it. It's the tone of your voice when you're stressed. Think about a hard day. Really picture it. You're overwhelmed, sleep deprived. You've been running on fumes since before sunrise. You go to your baby. You pick them up, and you say something completely normal. Okay. Okay. I'm here, but your voice is tight. There's an edge in it, a tension, underneath the words. What most parents don't realize is that babies are exquisitely tuned to what researchers call vocal prosody, the rhythm, the pitch, the emotional texture of your voice. This sensitivity exists from before they are even born, by 3 months old. A baby can distinguish between a calm voice and a stressed one with startling accuracy, and their nervous system responds to what it detects, not to what the words mean. Here is what the research shows, and it is striking. Scientists at the University of Oregon found that infants as young as 6 months old showed measurable stress responses, elevated heart rate, elevated cortisol when they overheard adult arguments. And here is the part that stopped researchers. The babies were asleep. They were not consciously aware of what was happening around them, and their bodies were still reacting. So when you speak to your baby with tension in your voice, even while saying the most loving words, they are not processing the words. They are feeling the tone, and to them, a tense tone carries one message. The person I depend on for everything is not okay right now. And if they are not okay, I am not safe. This does not mean you need to perform happiness when you are falling apart inside, but it does mean that taking one single slow breath before you pick up your baby, just one, can shift your nervous system just enough that the signal your baby receives changes completely. Now, number 3 seems completely harmless on the surface. You have almost certainly done it today. It's forcing interaction. You know this moment. You hold your baby out toward a relative, a friend, maybe someone who just absolutely loves babies. The person leans in enthusiastically, voice high and loud, base close, and your baby turns away, looks down, maybe starts to fuss, and the adult's response is almost always the same. Oh, come on, look at me. Here is what is actually happening inside your baby in that moment. They are not being shy. They are not being difficult. They are communicating a boundary. Babies use gaze aversion, looking away, as a regulatory strategy. It is their way of saying, this is too much right now. I need a break. When that signal is ignored, when the interaction is pushed past the point where the baby has already tried to opt out, it teaches them something that can take years to unlearn. Your boundaries don't matter. Your no will be overridden even by the people who are supposed to protect you. That lesson doesn't get stored as a conscious memory. It gets stored as a felt sense, a body-level belief about how the world works. We're 3 behaviors in, and I want to pause for just a second and ask you honestly, are you seeing yourself in any of these? Because most parents do, and that's exactly the point. These aren't things that careless parents do. These are things that loving, well-meaning, deeply devoted parents do every single day, because nobody ever sat them down and explained what was actually happening underneath the surface. That's what we're doing here. So let's keep going, because we are just getting started. Number 4, and this is the one I mentioned at the very beginning, the one almost every parent does in the first year, often multiple times a day, without a second thought. Dismissing your baby's emotions. Picture it. Your baby is upset, really upset. Maybe they're crying because you took something out of their hands. Maybe they're frustrated because a toy rolled just out of reach. And your response? Completely natural, completely instinctive. The response that most of us learned from our own parents is, "You're okay. You're fine." 2 words, said with love, said with the genuine intention of soothing. And yet here is the science behind why that phrase is far more complicated than it sounds. Babies do not have the neurological capacity to regulate their own emotions. That ability lives primarily in the prefrontal cortex, and it doesn't fully develop until the mid-20s. What babies have instead is something called co-regulation. They literally borrow your regulated nervous system to calm down their own. You are not just offering comfort in those moments. You are providing a biological scaffold that their developing brain needs to come back down from distress. When you minimize what they're feeling, you're fine. Stop crying. The baby's emotional brain is fully activated, flooded. But the co-regulation isn't coming. The distress has nowhere to go. And over time, repeated emotional dismissal teaches a child something devastating. What I feel inside does not match what I'm being told about it. That gap between their internal experience and the reflection they receive is one of the earliest seeds of emotional dysregulation, anxiety, and a deep, persistent difficulty with self-trust that can follow a person for decades. Study after study has confirmed this. Chronic misattunement, not abuse, not neglect, but simply failing to accurately reflect a baby's emotional experience back to them is one of the most significant predictors of emotional difficulties in childhood and beyond. And the solution is simpler than most parents expect. You don't have to fix their emotions. You don't have to make it stop. You just have to see it. Numb it. You're really frustrated right now, aren't you? That's the whole intervention. The seeing. The naming that alone changes everything. Number 5. And this one is going to reframe something you probably do every single day. Screen time. But not in the way you've heard it discussed before. Everyone has heard the warnings about babies watching screens. But what the research is now zeroing in on is something far more specific and far more overlooked. What happens when a parent is on a screen while their baby is right there with them? In a now famous series of studies called the Still Face Experiments, originally designed by Dr. Edward Tronick, researchers had mothers interact normally with their babies, warm, responsive, present, then enquete. The mothers adopted a completely blank, unresponsive expression. Within seconds, the babies became visibly distressed. They tried everything in their social toolkit, smiling, pointing, vocalizing, doing everything they could to re-engage their mother. And when nothing worked, they collapsed inward. Some turned away. Some began to cry. Some showed physiological signs of acute stress, all from a face going still. Here's why that matters for your phone. When you are truly absorbed in scrolling, your face goes still. Your responsiveness drops. You become, neurologically speaking, a still face parent. And to your baby, who is continuously monitoring your face as their primary source of information about whether the world is safe right now. That blank, screen-absorbed expression triggers the exact same distress response. This isn't a judgment about being on your phone. It's about understanding what your face means to your baby. Your face is their emotional mirror, and when that mirror goes blank even briefly, even repeatedly across an ordinary day, it registers in ways you cannot see. Number 6. And this one has become something close to a cultural epidemic. Overstimulation. We live in a world that treats stimulation as enrichment. Bright toys, loud music, baby classes, sensory bins, baby gyms strung with flashing lights and crinkle sounds. And every bit of it comes from a place of love, from the deep, genuine desire to give your baby every possible advantage. But here's what most parents are never told. A newborn's nervous system can only process a tiny fraction of the sensory input that adults navigate without even noticing. What feels like a normal, slightly busy environment to you, the TV humming in the background, a few people talking, the occasional buzz of a phone. Some music on low can feel catastrophically overwhelming to a baby's immature nervous system. The signals pile up faster than the brain can sort them, and the whole system goes into overload. And the signs of overstimulation are almost always misread. Babies who are overstimulated cry, arch their back, go rigid, look away, hiccup, sneeze, or suddenly become very glassy-eyed and zoned out. And the parental instinct in those moments is to try harder, more rocking, more talking, more stimulation to distract and soothe, which, tragically, makes it worse. What an overstimulated baby needs is the exact opposite of what instinct tells you to give. They need dimness, quiet, stillness, a calm nervous system right next to their own, less, not more. Number 7. And I promised you, this one would change how you see ordinary moments, so here it is. Not narrating your world together. I know that sounds strange, so stay with me. One of the most significant discoveries in infant psychology over the last 2 decades is the power of what researchers call serve and return interactions. These are the moments where a baby does something, makes a sound, points at something across the room, looks at an object with wide, the curious eyes, and the caregiver responds, acknowledges it, follows the baby's lead. Oh, you see that? That's the light, isn't it? This back and forth, even with a baby who cannot respond in words, even in the most ordinary moment of an ordinary afternoon, does something extraordinary inside the developing brain. It builds neural connections in the prefrontal cortex at a rate that simply does not happen without it. Language development, emotional intelligence, executive function, all of it is being constructed through these tiny, casual, constant moments of shared attention. When those moments are missed, when the baby points and no one looks, when the baby vocalizes and gets no response, when curiosity gets no acknowledgement, the neural pathways that were ready to form simply don't. The brain moves on, and the window, while not permanently closed, gets narrower. The Harvard Center on the Developing Child calls serve and return the single most important interaction in early development. Not toys, not educational programs, not carefully curated enrichment classes. The back and forth, present moment, face-to-face responsiveness of a caregiver who notices what their baby notices. That is it. That is the whole thing. Number 8. Sudden separations without any transition. You're leaving for work. You need to hand your baby to someone else. And someone at some point told you that the best way to do it is to sneak out, to wait until the baby is distracted, slip away quietly, and avoid the whole messy, tearful goodbye. It seems kinder. It seems smarter. Less drama for everyone. But here is what actually happens when you do that. Your baby is playing, content, safe, and then, without a single warning, the person they are most neurologically anchored to, the person whose heartbeat they have known since before they took their first breath, is simply gone. No transition, no signal, no goodbye, just absence where there was presence. To a baby's nervous system, this is not just surprising, it is alarming at a primal level. And the consequence isn't less crying, it is actually more anxiety. Because the baby has now absorbed something deeply unsettling. The people I love can disappear without warning, which means I can never fully relax. I have to stay alert. I have to monitor constantly for signs that they might leave again. The research on this is remarkably consistent. Babies who experience predictable, acknowledged transitions, even when those transitions involve crying at the goodbye, develop more secure attachment than babies whose caregivers regularly vanish without warning. And this is the part worth sitting with: the crying at a visible, honest goodbye is not distress building. It is distress releasing. There is a fundamental difference between those two things. One leaves residue, the other clears it. Number 9. This one is quiet. So quiet, it almost doesn't feel like anything at all. Physical disconnect. Touch is not a luxury for babies. It is a biological necessity, and the research on this point is so consistent, so overwhelming, that calling physical closeness optional would be scientifically inaccurate. When a baby is held, oxytocin, the bonding hormone, is released in both the baby and the caregiver simultaneously. Heart rate stabilizes. Cortisol drops. The vagal nerve, the primary nerve of the parasympathetic nervous system, is activated, drawing the whole body into a state of calm and safety. All of this happens through touch, through simple physical closeness. But here is what often gets overlooked in that picture. It's not just about picking them up when they cry. It's about the casual, incidental physical connection that happens or doesn't happen throughout the ordinary hours of the day. A hand resting on their back while they play on the floor. A brush of your fingers across their cheek as you walk past. The simple warmth of having them nearby. These micro moments of touch are continuously sending a message at a frequency your baby never stops receiving. You are safe. You are seen. You are not alone. Babies who experience chronically low physical contact, even in genuinely loving homes where they are fed and stimulated and cared for, beautifully show measurably higher baseline cortisol levels. Their nervous systems are perpetually running a low-grade stress response, not because they are in danger, but because one of the body's most primary signals of safety is chronically, quietly absent. And number 10, I've saved this one for last, not because it's the most dramatic, but because it is, in many ways, the most important and the most rarely spoken about with honesty: parental emotional unavailability. Not neglect, not absence in any physical sense. Emotional unavailability. The parent who is right there, who feeds and changes and holds and shows up in every measurable way, but who is internally somewhere else entirely: grieving, depressed, anxious, dissociated, carrying something so heavy that even while their arms are full of their baby, their emotional self is somewhere far away. This is important, and it is so rarely discussed with the honesty it deserves. Babies do not just need your body present, they need your emotional self present. The research on parental depression in particular reveals something both heartbreaking and clarifying at the same time. Babies of depressed mothers, even mothers who performed every single physical act of caregiving, who never missed a feeding or a bath or a bedtime, showed disrupted attachment patterns, elevated stress responses, and measurably altered development in the brain regions responsible for emotion and stress regulation. This is not about blaming depressed parents. Depression is not a choice. And anyone carrying it while also raising a baby is doing something extraordinarily hard. But what this research illuminates is something profound. Your baby is not just receiving your actions, they are receiving your emotional state. The invisible interior weather of you is something your baby is reading constantly, with a sensitivity that has no adult equivalent. And so the most extraordinary gift you can give your baby, more than any toy, any class, any carefully chosen intervention, is working on your own nervous system, your own healing, your own regulation. Because a parent who pauses to take one breath before responding, who reaches out for support instead of white-knuckling through it alone, who practices even the smallest, most imperfect acts of self-care, that parent changes something in the room. Something shifts in the air, and the baby feels it. They always feel it. So here we are, 10 things. And I want you to notice, honestly, how you feel right now. Because if you feel a little seen, if there's a moment or two from this list that landed somewhere tender that feeling matters, that is not guilt. That is attunement. That is the exact same quality that makes you a good parent. The fact that you watched this, the fact that you wanted to understand, the fact that you were willing to ask yourself, quietly, Am I missing something? Am I hurting my baby without knowing it? That question, that willingness to look honestly at the thing, is not a small thing. It is everything. Your baby does not need a perfect parent. The research is actually very clear on this point. The pediatric psychoanalyst D.W. Winnicott called it the good enough parent, someone who gets it wrong and then repairs it, who misses and then notices the miss, who doesn't always get it right, but who keeps coming back to reconnect, to re-engage, to say, with their presence, I see you, I'm here. That return, that repair, is the architecture of secure attachment. Not perfection, return. Again and again and again. So the next time your baby looks up at you that deep, open, completely unguarded gaze that only babies are capable of giving, to know that they are not simply looking at your face, they are reading you, trusting you, wiring themselves around the experience of being with you. And in that moment, with all your imperfections and exhaustion and love and uncertainty, you are enough. You have always been enough. If this video gave you something, a new way of seeing, a single moment of recognition, even one small shift in how you'll respond next time, share it with another parent who needs to hear it. Because the most powerful thing we can do for the next generation isn't a curriculum or a program or a perfectly optimized niche. It's this understanding what is actually happening inside the smallest, most vulnerable people in our lives, and choosing, again and again, to respond to it with presence. I'll see you in the next one.